This place has claimed sightings of UFOs, cryptids such as Bigfoot, and other abnormally large animals, paranormal entities, and even satanic rituals. Literally a storm of horribly terrifying things. We're gonna break this into 3 parts. Part 1, we're gonna go over the history of this place. Part 2, we're gonna go over the reported sightings and happenings. And in part 3, I'm gonna talk about this crazy video that I watched from another YouTuber. They went to check it out for themselves, and the findings make the show Ghost Hunters look like child's play. I mean, like, YouTubers are really getting good at putting these videos together. Like, I was thoroughly impressed. So, if you're ready to deep dive into this twisted adventure with me, buckle up, bring your biggest cup of the hottest tea as we explore the history and testimonies of the Bridgewater Triangle. You like how I did that? Okay, let's get into it. What is the Bridgewater Triangle? The Bridgewater Triangle was bestowed its mysterious name by cryptozoologist Loren Coleman in his 1983 published book, Mysterious America, Mysterious Name, Mysterious Book. In this book, he goes on to describe a 200 square mile area in southeastern Massachusetts with an extended history of strange, paranormal, and often sinister activity. The towns at the 3 points of this triangle are Abington, Freetown, and Rehoboth. Let me stop you there. Alright, before we get into all of the creepy happenings in this area, it is important that we recap the history of the land. Its dark past is filled with violence, bloodshed, which may have baked the energy into the land that is experienced there today. So, yes, it's history. No, it's not gonna be boring. Look, take it from me, as someone who has ADHD, I had a hard time with history in school because it wasn't taught to us in an interesting way. But now as an adult, I have the opportunity to look into stuff that I want to know about, and there's a lot of hidden drama in the past. Like, it is a reality show, a horrible reality show, but a reality show nonetheless. Stay for the history. You're gonna be interested to hear what I've got to say here. What made this land so dark? We're gonna discuss one of the bloodiest wars per capita in American history. And it's a war that, honestly, for myself in school, I remember brushing on it, but we brushed on it and breezed by it. We're gonna talk about King Philip's War. Who was King Philip? King Philip was not a white man. Philip was his English given name, but Philip's real name was Metacom, also referred to as Metacomet, and he was the Poconoa. Okay, and you're gonna have to bear with me here. I've looked up how to pronounce these names ahead of time because I didn't want to butcher them, but it may happen. So Metacom was the Pokanoket chief and sachem of the Wampanoag Confederacy. Sachem, what's a sachem? Sachem is basically what we know as chiefs. So he was the chief of the Wampanoags. He adopted the name Philip because of his father's relationship with the Mayflower Pilgrims. Yeah, his dad met the Mayflower Pilgrims when they came, so we're talking forever ago. The English colonists didn't understand how any group of people could be ruled unless it was by a king or a queen, so they dubbed our friend here King Philip. Relations back to his father's initial meet with the Pilgrims began friendly. Hey, welcome to our land. We have more than enough. Like, if you want to come and stay here, sure, that's fine. And everyone was nice, and it was wonderful, right? But slowly, the English colonists began encroaching farther into the land and into their hunting grounds, into their living spaces. It was like just this takeover. The English colonists had most they asked for milk, and then they asked for this and that, and it was not good. It built up a lot of resentment. By 1675, tons and tons of colonists had settled in New England, and as I said, most of them were Puritans, and they valued religion and industry above everything else. That was all they cared about. You know, they had this freedom now. They were away from the motherland, and they were living the way they wanted to. Their missionary work began immediately, and they were successful in converting groups of Native Americans. And those Native Americans, after being converted, were referred to at the time as praying Indians. Praying Indians lived according to English customs, but they didn't get to enjoy the finer things in life to the full rights of an Englishman. So it was like, oh yeah, like you can come and live among us. If you just change your beliefs, it's gonna be great. Only, yeah, no, they still lived in poverty, and they dealt with consistent prejudice from their white neighbors. They were treated terribly. The colonies just continued to grow, and they squeezed the Native Americans out of their ancestral land. The tribes in that area, now let's see how well I can pronounce these, but the Nipmuc, the Mohicans, the Narragansetts, and the Wampanoag. Each tribe was ruled by a sachem, like I said, the chief. This brings us to King Philip, sachem of the Wampanoag tribe. They tried to live in harmony, but when you keep pushing the way they were pushing, you're gonna wear out your welcome. So what was the breaking point? Well, here's where it gets saucy. In 1675, Josiah Winslow, who was the governor of the Plymouth colony, took a meeting with a praying Indian. His name was John Sassamon. John Sassamon. Yeah. John Sassamon is a rat. A dirty little rat. A Judas. A rat. He ran to Josiah Winslow and was like, yo, King Philip over here is planning an attack, and his goal is to get you guys to GTFO. So he gave them a heads up, so of course they had time to just kind of be on guard. Well, this information must have gotten back somehow, because later that month, John Sassamon was found under the ice of a local pond with a broken neck. At this point, the governor of the Plymouth colony was like, oh, we gotta find out who did this. So the English arrested 3 Wampanoag for the murder of this praying Indian, and another praying Indian testified against them. These 3 men were hanged, or hung, I don't know. Correct me. You can see here the issue, like, not only are they wearing out their welcome, but they're creating this giant point of contention where, like, there's sects of their own people that are not being loyal to them. Like, you should be able to trust your people, right? No. They're converting our people. Like, what is going on? There's brainwashing our people, and now our people are siding against us. Like, what the hell is going on? So, word got back to the Wampanoag, and they were pissed. The British exceeded their authority. Like, y'all just over the fuck stepped. Like, okay, like, we killed a guy. That's our business. That's one of our guys. We dealt with something that needed to be dealt with, and now you think you're the lawmakers here, and you are going to, instead of coming to the leader of our tribe and have a talk about these 3 potential people, you took the authority to take our people and hang them. Sorry, but fuck, right the fuck off. Get out of here. It was bad. Like, wouldn't you be offended? Not even offended. I would be outraged. So, an area that was just way too close to the Wampanoags' very frequented grounds, whether that was for hunting or living. Like, they were already just really encroaching further and further into their land and gobbling up their resources. And so they were like, alright, you want to fight? So some Wampanoag warriors went into this town, burned the thing to the ground, killed their people to be like, you want to play? We can play. And this is where the war starts. It begins to go back and forth. An interesting part of history to just think about. The Wampanoag did not have any written accounts of what happened. So most of the history that we know and that we are taught is based off of accounts from the colonists. And the colonists depicted these violent natives ravaging their towns, slaughtering their people, and burning things to the ground. But at the same time, when the English were going in to fight the Native Americans and going into their villages, they were slaughtering the people, they were burning it to the ground, they were raping their people, they were selling their people into slavery after they caught them. So, I'm just saying, not everyone was innocent here. Just take that into account. Now, initially, when this war started, the colonists really had a hard time fighting back because they weren't used to fighting in swamplands over the battlefields that they're used to. They were used to being like, alright guys, we're gonna meet here at 12 o'clock on Sunday in this big, beautiful, giant field, and we're gonna march in a big old line against each other, and we're gonna just walk into each other's bayonets and see what happens. Yeah, no, this was like legit warfare, and they didn't know how to fight in a swamp. The Native Americans were kicking ass initially, but the fight continued down the coast and eventually began to come against the tribes who had remained neutral during all of this. Like, not all of the tribes felt the same way. There were some that were a lot friendlier with the local settlers. This fight starts going down, and now you're involving tribes that were neutral, and you are attacking their villages, and it was bad. As things began to turn, surprisingly, ironically, the English started to win battles. In a lot of these accounts, it was almost by accident. It was just careless warfare. There really wasn't a plan. There were different generals, and it was just we weren't, like, the United States was not really an organized place yet. It was almost like the land of lost boys, if you will. We didn't have the most proper government put in place. Like, people were sent over, but it's still like there was so much land to explore, and it was so undeveloped that, like, how do you control what's going on? You don't. So the English slowly began to win battle after battle, and as it started to get colder out and stuff, just with the battles, wounds, etc., resources getting all, like, taken up or burned down, the Native American numbers began to dwindle. A lot of them got sick. King Philip knew that the end was near, so he went back home. And Captain Benjamin Church caught wind that he had gone back home, so he took his men and they surrounded the Wampanoag camp at Mount Hope, and they opened fire, and battle begins. And during this battle, a large Native American was seen running through the woods, through the firing, this behemoth of a man. And so ironic, but a praying Indian that was there fighting with Church opened fire and killed this man. When they went to go and look at the body, it was confirmed. They knew without a doubt that it was medical and sold them into slavery in Bermuda. Shipped them away from their home country, sold them into slavery, and who knows what they did with the rest of the Native Americans that were actually still there at Mount Hope. They likely were sold into slavery as well. And then, on top of all of it, the praying Indians that were, like, dubbed safe by the English. They started to suspect some of them that they had helped in the war and were spies. And so anyone that was suspected of that, they took all of them and put them on this island. And I can't remember what it's called, but it's near Boston, this windy, cold island with no resources, and banished them there. Well, you thought you were like, look, I'm sorry, but you were playing with the enemy, and guess what? It came to bite you in the butt. The final chief to surrender, we gotta talk about that because it didn't completely end just yet. Metacomet's chief lieutenant, Anawan, had survived this battle. He was there. And Captain Church was able to track him to his camp. And according to Church, because we don't have the accounts from the mouths of babes of our Native American brethren, but according to Church, they sat and had a nice meal. They didn't fight. They said he tracked him down, and they sat and they broke bread together. And then Anawan gave him, it's called a wampum belt, and this wampum belt was gifted to Anawan by Metacomet. And according to Church, Anawan was like, oh, I want to show you a sign of respect here. Take this wampum belt. Obviously, you'll cherish it. Like, this is a sign of respect from me to you, and gave it to him. I don't believe that for a second. I think he took it. I think he's a dirty, dirty rat, and I'm not a fan of him. So anyway, according to Church, they had this lovely conversation. But then Church, basically, what happened is he convinced Anawan that if he surrendered and went back to Plymouth with him, everything was going to be fine. Was it fine? No, it was not fine. They took him back in chains, and he was executed. Yeah. So this set a precedent for how the English would treat the Native Americans. It spurred the, racism, violence, putting them into slavery, casting them to reservations. They felt like they had just this, what's the word I'm looking for? This entitlement over the land, and these dirty natives lost, and they're not treated like humans. It's terribly sad, and it's awful. It's awful. So now, with all of that, you understand King Philip's War, and this took place in and around the Bridgewater Triangle. So it is believed that all of that bloodshed mixed with the Native American beliefs and their gods and everything, and maybe even the chance that the Native Americans, it was believed that perhaps they cursed the land after everything that happened, but all of this became the perfect storm to create a paranormal portal of sorts where so many goings on are happening. And that is the history, the long